Monday morning arrived, and Ijena stood by the door, waiting for Naomi to finish getting ready. She had offered to drive Naomi to her job interview, which had been the plan since Naomi had pleaded for help the previous day. Ijena watched as Naomi finally stepped into the living room, with an eager smile. "Ready?" Ijena asked, forcing a smile. She couldn't shake the lingering feeling that Naomi's presence in her life was unsettling, but her kind heart kept her committed to helping her old friend. Just a few more days, she reminded herself. "Yes. Thank you so much for this, Ijena." "You don't know how much I appreciate it," Naomi replied, her eyes wide with gratitude. "This job could really change everything for me." "Of course," Ijena replied, turning toward the car. "I'm glad I can help." As they drove, Naomi chatted nervously, sharing stories from her university days and filling the car with a mixture of excitement and tension. Ijena nodded along, still trying to shake the bad feeling she had been having since Naomi's stay. They arrived at the office building downtown, where Naomi was interviewing. She glanced at Ijena. "Wish me luck." Ijena gave her a gentle smile. "Good luck, Naomi. Remember, you're capable. Just show them that." Naomi nodded, inhaling deeply, and walking into the building as Ijena drove away. That afternoon, Ijena was at her new salon branch training her new team and attending to customers to ensure everything was perfect. She was arranging some products on a shelf when the door jingled, and she looked up, surprised to see Naomi standing there with a huge grin on her face. "I got the job," Naomi exclaimed, practically bouncing on her feet. "Oh, Naomi, that's wonderful news," Ijena said, setting the product down and walking over to hug her. "Congratulations." Naomi smiled. "Thank you. Honestly, I couldn't have done it without you. If you hadn't let me stay, I don't know what I would have done." As Ijena pulled away, a question came to mind. "Wait, how did you know where my salon was?" Naomi's smile disappeared for a second, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, I saw it on your social media. Relax, I'm not a crazy stalker," she replied, waving her hand dismissively. "Your salon looks amazing, by the way." "Okay, I see," Ijena replied, her smile a bit tighter now. "Well, thank you." Naomi glanced around the salon with a look of envy she tried to mask as admiration. "You're really living the dream, aren't you?" she said, her voice cold. Ijena felt a feeling of discomfort but nodded, brushing it off. "It's been a lot of work, but it's worth it. I'm grateful for every opportunity." Naomi took a breath, as if summoning the courage to speak. "Ijena, I know this is a huge ask, and I feel terrible about it, but would you mind if I stayed just one more week? I'm supposed to move into the staff quarters, but they told me the apartment isn't ready yet. They are still doing some renovations." "I'm so sorry, I know this is the last thing you need right now." Ijena's heart sank. She had hoped Naomi's stay would be over, but she also understood that this job was Naomi's only hope for stability. "One more week?" she asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. Naomi nodded, her eyes wide with hope. "Yes, just 1 week. After that, I'll be out of your hair, I swear." Sighing, Ijena nodded. "Alright, but I'll need to talk to Konu first. This is his home too, and I can't make this decision alone. But remember, after this week, you'll need to find somewhere else." Naomi's face brightened, and she responded. "Thank you, Ijena. I promise, this is the last favor I'll ask." That evening, Ijena and Konu sat down in their bedroom to discuss Naomi's request. Konu was quiet, as she explained the situation. "I just don't feel comfortable with this, Ijena," he finally said, his voice calm but firm. "You know how I feel about her, and I don't trust her motives. She's already overstayed her welcome." "I know, Konu," Ijena replied, reaching out to hold his hand. I feel the same way. But she doesn't have anywhere else to go, and I don't want her to lose this job. It's just for 1 more week. Konu sighed, looking into her eyes. 1 week, Ijena. And after that, she has to go. Thank you, she whispered, smiling. I'll make sure it's just 1 week. Tuesday night passed quietly until just after midnight when Ijena's phone rang. Startled, she reached over to her nightstand and glanced at the screen. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the name. It was the manager of her new salon. She answered immediately, her voice thick with sleep and worry. Hello. Mrs. Ijena, the manager's voice came through, panicked and breathless. Your salon, it's on fire. You need to come quickly. For a moment, Ijena was frozen, unable to process the words. Then she shook Konu awake, her voice trembling. Konu. The salon, it's on fire. We have to go. They dressed hurriedly and rushed out to the car, driving in tense silence. When they arrived at the scene, they saw a thick cloud of smoke billowing into the night sky, flames licking at what was left of the building. There were fire trucks and firemen everywhere, hoses blasting water as they tried to put out the fire, but it was clear that the fire had already destroyed everything. Ijena's heart shattered as she watched the flames consume the salon, her dreams and hard work reduced to ash before her eyes. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she cried, her heart shattered with despair. Konu, my salon, she cried, her voice filled with despair. Everything I've worked for, it's gone. Konu held her tightly, his own face filled with shock and devastation. Ijena, I'm so sorry. I can't believe this. The fire chief approached them, his face grave. Mr. and Mrs. Konu. Yes, Konu replied, his voice tight. Ijena couldn't stop weeping. The fire chief removed his helmet, a look of sympathy in his eyes. We managed to contain the fire, but I'm afraid there's not much left. Based on what we found, it appears that gasoline was used to start the fire and the sprinklers were all turned off. This was no accident, it was deliberate. Ijena's mind went blank as the word sank in. Someone had set fire to her salon. Someone had destroyed everything she had worked so hard to build. But, who, why, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Who would do this? The fire chief shook his head. We are still investigating, but this type of arson is usually personal. We'll do everything we can to find out who's responsible. Ijena nodded numbly, the weight of the law settling over her like a suffocating blanket. She and Konu watched in silence as the fire continued to burn and destroy what was left of her hard work. They drove home in silence, and when they entered the house, they found Naomi waiting up, her face filled with concern as she rushed over to them. I heard about the fire, she said quickly. I'm so sorry, Ijena. I can't imagine what you're going through. Ijena slumped on the couch in the living room and Naomi sat next to her. She was too exhausted to think clearly, too broken to care about anything else. Thank you, Naomi, she whispered, her voice hollow. It was everything I've worked for. I don't know how I'm going to move forward from this. Naomi held her hands, a small, almost invisible smile at the corners of her mouth. You're strong, Ijena. You'll get through this. And remember, I'm here for you. Konu watched them, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took in Naomi's words. He couldn't shake the feeling that something about her reaction wasn't genuine, but he pushed the thought aside, focusing on comforting his wife. As they went to bed, Ijena fell into a restless sleep, her dreams filled with images of flames and smoke. But even in the depths of her sorrow, a small part of her mind couldn't ignore the question that had started to creep in. Who would do this? And why? The next 2 days following the fire were a blur of insurance claims, police interviews, and endless paperwork. Ijena felt like she was moving through a fog, as everything reminded of the loss she had suffered. Her friends and family reached out with messages of support, but nothing could fill the void left by the destruction of her dream. Naomi continued to stay with them, offering words of comfort and even helping around the house. She played the part of the concerned friend flawlessly, but Konu's suspicion continued to grow. He couldn't shake the bad feeling he had about her and tried to shake it off. After all, she had done nothing but be a supportive friend so far to Ijena during her stay. But then there was the timing. Naomi had shown up just days before the fire, and it seemed too coincidental, but then he couldn't prove anything. One evening, after Naomi had gone to bed, Konu sat down with Ijena in the living room, his face set with determination. "Ijena," he began carefully, "there's something that's been bothering me. I haven't said anything because I know you're grieving, but I can't ignore it any longer." Ijena looked at him, her eyes filled with sadness and confusion. "What is it, Konu?" "It's Naomi," he said, his voice low. "I can't shake the feeling that she's hiding something. The way she's been acting, the timing of her arrival, it all seems too convenient." Ijena frowned, feeling a pound of defensiveness. "Konu, she's been nothing but supportive since the fire. She's going through a hard time too. I don't think it's fair to suspect her of something so terrible." Konu sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "Ijena, I know you want to see the best in people, but you can't ignore the facts. She's been in our lives for barely a week, and suddenly everything seems to be going wrong. Remember the dream you had? What if all this is what the dream was about?" Ijena hesitated, the seeds of doubt beginning to take root. But she shook her head, refusing to believe that her old friend could be capable of something so cruel. "I don't know, Konu," she said quietly. "I just don't know how to connect Naomi with the fire. I mean, how could she be involved? We were all here at home together, right?" Konu shook his head. "You're probably right. I'm sorry to bother you with this, especially with everything that's going on. Just forget it, okay?" Thursday morning dawned quietly, with an unusual stillness hanging over the house. Ijena lay in bed, her eyes heavy, staring blankly at the ceiling. The stress from the fire, the loss of her salon, and the recent sleepless nights had left her feeling drained. She didn't have the strength to get up, to face the world, or even go through the activities of a regular day. Konu noticed her mood as he got out of bed, glancing at her with a mix of concern and tenderness. He moved toward her, as she sat up in bed. "You should rest today," he said softly. "I can take care of things this morning. I'll get Lothar ready and drop him off at school." Ijena looked up at him, grateful for his kindness. "Thank you, Konu," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Konu smiled. "You don't have to do anything alone, Ijena. Get some sleep. I'll be back soon." Ijena closed her eyes, sinking back into the pillow as she heard Konu move around the room, getting dressed and gathering Lothar's school things. She could hear her little boy chattering happily, unaware of the tension his parents were holding beneath the surface. "Daddy, can I have extra cookies in my lunch today?" Lothar's small voice asked. Konu chuckled, his voice filled with affection. "Only if you promise to eat all your vegetables first." Ijena's heart warmed at the sound, and for a brief moment, she felt a feeling of peace. Konu had everything under control. She could finally let herself sleep off, if only for a little while. Hours later, she was jolted awake by the shrill ringing of her phone. Disoriented, she reached for her phone to answer it, her heart pounding as an unsettling feeling washed over her. "Hello," she murmured, still half asleep. "Mrs. Konu." The voice on the other end was filled with urgency, snapping her to full attention. "Yes, this is she," Ijena replied, a sense of dread prickling her skin. "This is Mrs. Obiola from Lothar School. I'm calling to let you know that your son has fallen seriously ill. We've rushed him to St. Luke's Hospital. You should come as quickly as you can." The words felt like a punch to the gut. Her mind spun, struggling to make sense of the situation. Is he okay? They're working on him now, Mrs. Obiola replied. Please hurry. Without a second thought, Ijena hung up and immediately dialed Kanu, her hands shaking as she waited for him to pick up. Kanu, it's Lothar, she gasped when he answered, her voice breaking. They've taken him to the hospital. He's very sick, Kanu. I'm heading there now. Kanu's voice was filled with panic. I'm leaving right now. I'll meet you there. Drive safely, Ijena. She rushed to get ready, her mind racing with questions and fears as she made her way to the hospital. Every possible scenario played through her mind, each one worse than the last. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, praying, begging God to keep her son safe. When she arrived at the hospital, she found Kanu pacing outside the emergency room, his face pale with worry. The moment he saw her, he pulled her into a tight hug, and for a few seconds, they clung to each other in silence. A doctor approached them, his face serious but calm. Mr. and Mrs. Kanu. Yes, doctor, Kanu replied, his voice tense. How is our son? The doctor offered a reassuring smile. He's stable now. It was a severe case of food poisoning, but he's responding to treatment. Thankfully, the school acted quickly and got him here in time. If they hadn't, it could have been much worse. Ijena's knees nearly buckled with relief, and Kanu held her up, his own face edged with shock. Food poisoning. Ijena whispered, disbelief in her voice. But how? The doctor nodded sympathetically. It happens more often than you think. We are running some tests to identify the cause, but the important thing is that he's out of immediate danger. After the doctor left, Kanu turned to Ijena, his brow furrowed with confusion. I packed Lothar's lunch myself this morning. Everything was fresh. How could he have gotten food poisoning from that? When they spoke with Lothar's teacher, she confirmed that he hadn't eaten anything except the lunch he brought from home. Are you certain? Kanu asked, his voice filled with disbelief. He didn't eat anything else. The teacher nodded. Yes, Mr. Kanu. He only ate the food you packed. We even asked him several times, but he insisted that we watch the children closely at all times and they are supervised during lunch too. Ijena exchanged a worried look with Kanu, a chill running down her spine. They thought that something in the lunch could have made Lothar so ill felt like a terrible twist of fate, but she didn't want to believe it. Kanu, she murmured as they left the hospital and returned to their car, what is happening to us? Kanu reached over, squeezing her hand tightly. I don't know, Ijena, but we'll get through this. I promise. That evening, after they had returned home and put Lothar to bed, the house felt quieter than ever. She sat on the couch, her mind reeling from the events of the day, while Kanu took a call in his home office. After a while, Naomi came into the living room. Ijena, is everything okay? She asked. Ijena sighed, and she decided to tell Naomi about what had happened. Naomi had been staying with them and, despite her mixed feelings, she thought her friend had a right to know. Naomi. Ijena called softly. I wanted to let you know that something happened to Lothar today. Naomi's eyes widened in shock as she took in Ijena's weary face. Oh my goodness, Ijena. Is he all right? He is now, Ijena replied, her voice shaking slightly. But it was close. He was rushed to the hospital with severe food poisoning. The doctor said if they hadn't acted quickly, we could have lost him. Naomi gasped, reaching out to Ijena. I can't believe this. First the fire, and now this. I'm so sorry, Ijena. You must be feeling like everything's falling apart. Ijena nodded, fighting back tears. I don't know what's happening. It feels like we're being targeted. Naomi stroked her back, murmuring comforting words, though there was a flicker in her eyes, something Ijena couldn't quite place. "You're strong, Ijena. You'll get through this. And I'm here for you, for whatever you need." As Naomi left for her bedroom, and Ijena sat on the couch, Ijena felt a small sense of comfort, but the unease remained. Naomi's words had been kind, but they didn't remove the strange, lingering feeling that something was wrong. As she lay there, trying to make sense of it all, her phone rang, startling her. She glanced at the screen, her heart leaping when she saw her mother's name. "Hello, Mama," she answered, her voice filled with emotion. Her mother's voice was laced with worry. "Ijena, my dear, I heard about everything. Your sister called me after hearing about the fire, and now I hear that Lothar was hospitalized." "Yes, Mama," Ijena replied, struggling to keep her composure. It's been a nightmare. I feel like we're being tested in ways I don't understand." Her mother's tone softened, filled with concern. "My child, I can't imagine what you're going through, but you don't have to face this alone. I'm coming to see you tomorrow. I need to be there for you." A sense of relief washed over Ijena, and she nodded, feeling as if a small weight had been lifted. "Thank you, Mama. I think we need you here." When she hung up, she went to the bedroom and told Connie about her discussion with her mother. Connie gave her a look of relief. "Your mother's coming. That's good." "Yes," Ijena replied, her voice filled with relief. "Maybe she can help us make sense of this." "I don't know, Connie, but I just feel like we need some support right now." Connie nodded, wrapping an arm around her. "It'll be good to have her here. Maybe she can see things we can't." As they drifted off to sleep, Ijena felt relieved. Her mother had always been a strong support system for her. They both hoped that her mother's visit would bring clarity, but in the back of their minds, they couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows surrounding them were far from done.